This is the final word, England West Indies Daily, the second test match from Trent Bridge, the fourth day of the show, brought to you by Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. Geoff Lemon and Daniel Norcross with you, and we're going to start, as we always do, Daniel, with one of us, in this case you, telling me about an entire day of test cricket, a busy and full day of test cricket in the space of 30 seconds.
I don't know what went off out there. It's two Yorkshiremen got hundreds, Brook and Root and all that. England didn't get enough runs. They surely threw it all away. What were they doing? Only setting 380-odd. Turned out to be way too many. Way too many. After the West Indies got to 61 without loss, we were absolutely certain we were going to have a fifth day, and it was free to come in on the fifth day. The website got jammed. That was the most exciting thing that happened off the pitch today. And then the most exciting thing that happened on the pitch was that Shoaib Bashir got his third fifer in only his fifth test, and don't forget he didn't bowl a single ball in one of them, as England romped to victory and have won the series with one to play.
Yes, it was thanks for coming for Shoaib Bashir at Lords. He got a bat, but he didn't get allowed to score a run. He wasn't allowed to score a run today either. They don't like letting him get the singles that he's actually earned. He keeps having them taken away from him. But he did take five for at the end. The West Indies fell apart late. They were hanging in there and hanging in there and hanging in there across the first 4 days. I thought they did really well with the ball at times. They managed to just cling on to the back of England's coat and stop the English team from streaking away. They kept it to something that was vaguely possible, even though it would have been in the top 10 run chasers of all time. And everybody was pumping that up before the fourth innings. Oh, they were saying, remember Shy Hope, remember the twin tons at Leeds. West Indies have done this in England before. It's a very good batting pitch. They could spring a surprise here. And instead they got bowled out in 36.1 overs for 143. They lost by 241 runs. I think I said yesterday that I wouldn't trust them to chase more than 260. Feeling fairly accurate about that. Well, that would have been about twice as many as England ended up needing. So it was a pretty flat finish in that last session, not for England, who were cock-a-hoop about just how well everything had gone. But up until that point, we had a great test match. It was a confusingly fast ending to things. And it just felt like a team that had to work so hard, a team that knew that they were the underdogs, that knew that they were behind England after the first test thrashing, that knew that they were just hanging in there throughout those first 3.5 days. And then once it started to go badly, suddenly they were completely out of juice.
Yeah, it was like watching. We've seen this story so many times before, and many of us will have played matches in which this happens, in which you look back and you can't quite work out how you've lost all those wickets. You'll sit back in the changing room afterwards and go, well, what happened there? I don't get that.
Yep.
But it did happen, and it reminds me a little bit of something that I was told by, I think it was a Worcestershire team, who, when they got promoted, and I want to say about 2016, they were playing against Yorkshire. Yorkshire were the best side in the country at the time. They were in the middle of a streak of back-to-back titles and whatnot. And the Worcestershire had held on really, really well for sort of 2.5 days of this game. And it was a one-innings match, just like this one, really. And then suddenly, in a session, they were blown away. And what I'm afraid happens in red ball cricket, and 5-day cricket and 4-day cricket, is one of the reasons it's so marvellous is that the better team tends to win. They tend to win because it's just remorseless, it's relentless, and you have to keep on going. And they couldn't. And when it was 61 for none, you genuinely felt there was a possible surprise on. Oh, at the very least, you thought this is going to go into the last day, and very possibly after lunch on the last day. All the time thinking there'll come a moment when England make a breakthrough, and it'll be because there's a reason why these are historically difficult challenges. But it was the manner in which it happened. I think actually it was the wicket of the left hand of the number 3 Mackenzie was the one. It was strange to say, but that was the nail in the coffin for me, because it was a sort of nothing dismissal, a wide short ball that did turn a bit, and there was a sort of limp floofle of the bat, which got a little bit of fat on it, and then he's out. And then there's a sort of, that, you can't afford really cheap giveaway wickets when what you're trying to do is achieve history. But I guess, look, the better side won, the better side always wins. There was some great cricket on show today. We saw some lovely stroke making from Harry Brook and from Joe Root. We saw some really good batting from Craig Brathwaite and to a degree Mikael Louis at the beginning of that partnership. But you've got to be more than that to to cling on when you are man for man not as good. Well, not as experienced as well. That's the other thing. They're not as experienced. They haven't played in these conditions as much. And we were looking at the first innings and we were going, Athenaeus. Yes, it turns out it is Athenaeus, not Athanars, despite being told by half the people around the West Indies camp it's Athanars. Now it's Athenaeus. But it is Athenaeus. So despite what Athenaeus and Hodge had done so well in the first innings, replicating those things are tricky. So another reason why twin hundreds don't come around very often. They needed a Shea Hope. They didn't find a Shea Hope. In fact,
yes,
I'm afraid to say they're a bit hope.
Nobody knows where he is.
No one knows where Shea Hope is.
Yes, but I mean, Shea Hope is another example of exactly that, which is that he has that one match, which is glorious, and then almost no other performances in his entire Test career, and that's why he doesn't play Test cricket anymore, and that's why he goes around playing T20s, because Shea Hope is to the rest of his career as Kavem Hodge was to his second innings, in which he makes a duck, because it's hard to do those things twice. So they needed something. You know, I was sitting there, I was eyeballing it, thinking, okay, so 385 or whatever it was. I was like, okay, if the openers say get the 85, and then one of them goes on for a while, and it's one for 140 or 150 by the time they've wrapped up, and then they can come back the next day. Maybe they'll sort of be in it, and they'll give that fifth day crowd something to watch coming in for the free entry. But it all happened quickly. So Mikhail Louis has had this habit of batting a good hour or so and doing a decent job and then finding a way to get out. He does that just after drinks. Nicks Chris Wokes, who's just getting the ball to move away slightly, as he tends to do. You've got the McKenzie dismissal that you mentioned. The ball does keep low from Bashir. He's expecting more bounce when he's playing that angled bat shot, and gets the under edge, and it just crouches on him a little bit. And then Craig Brathwaite's the key one, because he came out quite briskly. He played a couple of nice cross-bat shots outside the off-stump early, and then he whacks a couple of boundaries in an over from Chris Wokes, and then last ball of the over, he's trying to be cautious. He's trying not to double down and look for another boundary, and nicks him for 47, and then it all slides away very quickly from there. Hodge playing back, LBW, straight ball from Bashir, angled in. Athenaeus left-hander edges Bashir to Root at slip, and then Kevin Sinclair gets that horrible ball from Mark Wood that jumps up at his face, and he gets the gloves up, but there's too much bounce on it. It hits the wristband as it just about breaks his arm, and ends up being caught in the cordon. So 91 for 6 after 61 for none, and really then it was just a matter of whether they would make England come back on day 5, which ended up not happening. Holder and De Silva batted for 8 overs and put on 22, which actually felt like a partnership of some substance given the context. De Silva whacks a big 6 down the ground off Bashir, and then Gus Atkinson cuts a ball in, hits him on the back leg in front of off. Bail height, so it comes up as a yellow, comes up as an umpire's call. That had to be the most out umpire's call I've ever seen. It was almost all of the ball obliterating the top of middle and off stumps after hitting him on the back leg in front. God knows how he reviewed it. And then Alzari Joseph, 2 balls later, high pace, ball keeps a bit low, he's bowled. Jason Holder whacks a 6 and a 4 off Bashir, and then gets bowled trying to keep strike. That ball that skids on past the outside edge and hits off stump, and then Shamar Joseph helps Bashir round out the 5-wicket haul by jumping away. He's rifled one nice drive down the ground off Atkinson, but jumping away and having a slog and getting bowled. So I thought Bashir bowled really nicely, used more flight, bowled that sort of aggressive off-spinners line outside the off-stump turning in, because the pitch had dried out a bit, and he was able to get some assistance from it and got some quite extravagant turn at times. And Mark Wood with the fastest average speed for an England bowler since records began, asterisk, in 2006. So we all talked up, Jofra Archer bowling the fastest spell for an England bowler in 2019, and then Gus Atkinson had the fastest spell for an England bowler last week, and now Mark Wood's had the fastest test match for an England bowler. So these numbers keep on stacking up for the 18 years that we've had them.
Yeah. And the whole thing was done in 20 overs. It was all absolutely mad. I mean, there's a few numbers out there that are worth looking at. They show Bashir. Andy Zoltzman was on this. Andy Zoltzman is a strange, twisted kind of genius. When Shoaib Bashir got his second wicket, he said, this is the first time in Trent Bridge that a spinner has taken 2 wickets in his first 2 overs since Shane Warne in 2005, when England was set 129 to win in that famous game, in that famous series. So we went,
No,
and I think
didn't know that.
no one else had done it.
Why would you know that?
So
why would you?
So from this,
Why would you think
we
to know that?
why would you think? Why would you? But partly because Trent Bridge is not a happy hunting ground for spinners. So of course he then went and got a third wicket in his third over, and no one has done that. So from just being the only other spinner, but not the best leg spin bowler of all time to have done it, he's now out on his own. And then there was even more weird shenanigans, as I recall. It's his third fiver in 4 matches. I think Nick Cook is among a couple of spinners who have had more wickets in their first 5 tests than Shoaib Bashir, but it's him and about 2 others. And to take 7 wickets in a match at Trent Bridge is a very elite group. I think it's Warne and Murali, Laker and Locke, and maybe one other in there. So, but part of it is good fortune and circumstance. Let's not be beat about the bush. The pitch started to turn, and it did not turn at all for 3 days. There was nothing. I mean, Bashir got very little, if at all. Sinclair got next to nothing. People had tried, but all had failed. And then suddenly after tea, for the reasons you said, dried out a bit. I think there must have been a bit more dust, a bit more wear and tear. There were more footmarks. There was a classic off-spinner's dismissal. The catch by Root at slip was absolutely picture-perfect off-spinner around the wicket to the left-hander. And so there was a bit more assistance. But he did also, I think, modify the way he bowled. And I think he's vindicated a decision that some people's eyebrows were raised at. No Leach, no Tom Hartley, no Rayan Ahmed, all bowlers who take the ball away from the right-hander. But actually the West Indies got quite a few left-handers in their team. So it wasn't the worst idea anyway, tactically. And then he's vindicated it with a couple of wickets of right-handers as well. I think he surprised, was it Hodge with the one that scurried on, got him LBW. I forget which man was LBW.
It was Hodge.
And it was in that perfect length. He didn't know quite whether to come forward, quite whether to stay back, and then it skipped on. So fair play to him. He bowled really well, and Wokes got a crucial wicket, the crucial wicket of Craig Brathwaite, who might have kept the game going well into the 5th day. He might have arrested that collapse, but the one ball that really did move quite extravagantly for the Seamers in that maniacal 20 overs was from Wokes, and it was to Brathwaite, and he is their most important batter in that circumstance. So it was just everything that worked right for England in those moments, didn't it? But it ended a kind of lovely test for so long. I mean, I find it odd, Geoff. I don't quite know how I assess it when I look back on the whole of the 4 days, because we seem to be kind of grumpy and disappointed that England had scored 416 all out on the first day. Like, oh, they weren't really trying. They should have scored 600. They've thrown it away.
More. Yeah, it would have been boring had they done that.
Don't you think? And then the West Indies come back at them. But then, England should have got a lead because of that stupid tactic with the 10th wicket, which is right. It was a stupid tactic, the 10th wicket. But it made for exciting stuff because it got them up to parity and beyond. And then, frankly, England's response to that was dynamic. It went at 4.5 and over. And today, they were forced actually to play really sensible cricket for the first hour and a bit when Root and Brook were out there. There wasn't, fancy teeing off shots and madnesses and reverse ramps. That all came right at the end. Brook and Root knew that there was a bit of vulnerability, that had they lost a couple of quick wickets, then that does open the door, to the West Indies, and a target of under 300 or just around the 310, 320 mark could have been a real pickle. So, you saw proper cricket then today, and we got to see elements of like happy Root. Like the happiest Root I can remember is Root at the end of the first day at Edgbaston in the first Test match in the Ashes, when suddenly he was entitled to do whatever he wanted. And of course, Stokes went, "Oh, stop that, happy Root. We're going to have a declaration." But do you remember? It's like his last 35 runs were playful. They were just, I felt you've earned the right to be playful, Joe. Frolicking. And we saw a bit of frolicking Root, which was nice. And we also saw, quite simply, the maddest piece of captaincy ever. If I thought yesterday was crazy, so Shoaib Bashir strides out. And I remember, I think I was on commentary saying, well, I mean, just as long as they don't do anything daft like we had to endure watching yesterday. And for one ball, they had a proper field. Atkinson had a go at it, missed it. And the response to him missing it was, send everybody back. Bradman's arrived. It was completely mad. Mercifully, Bashir did us all a favour by missing a straight one at the start of the next over. Otherwise, if I'd had to endure another 15, 20 minutes of 10 men out for Gus Atkinson, 9 men, I might have done my pieces. But it did mean that there was always something to talk about. We were never bored. I mean, we're never bored watching Test cricket anyway, but we were always engaged. And it was a proper game between two teams who slugged it out for 3 days, 2 sessions, and then and an hour. And then they stopped slugging it out, and one of them got absolutely hammered by the great big thing in cartoons that drops, the big weight that just drops.
The anvil.
Lands on the West Indies team. Yeah. And boom, bang.
Yep.
Goodbye.
I spent a bit of today looking at previous Test matches in which there were 3 innings of over 400. There have only been 8 previous Test matches, and there have been some great ones there. The Timeless Test in Durban was one of those, which is one of the greatest matches ever played in 1939. What was at the time the record run chase when Bradman runs down 404 in the last innings with Arthur Morris, that's one of those. The Sydney 2008 India-Australia very acrimonious Test match was one of those. So this Test could have sat up there with those great finishes had it not fallen to pieces, but it did.
Stan McCabe, Stan McCabe,
yes,
wasn't he involved?
No,
a 2-3-2. Wasn't there 3
he made a
400s
2-3-2
in that game?
No, not in that one. Must have been. I can't remember what the innings were, but there was certainly one that Australia make. But anyway, it wasn't quite a classic, but it had the makings of potentially being. I enjoyed the start of the day. Brook was aggressive in the way that sort of works for Harry Brook, which is straight driving for the most part. Second ball of the day, nails it, hits it straight at the fielder, but it was an aggressive start. Drives the boundary later in that over. And he goes on to hit 5 more boundaries on the way to his 100, which wasn't that far away, gets through to 109. Joe Root, meanwhile, is just working the ball beautifully. He keeps just playing it through square leg here and there, and then opening the face and dabbing it through the cordon, walking at the seamers constantly. So everything that was on a nice length, he was walking at, and then angling the bat to turn it one way or another and find a 1 or a 2. So that method worked. They complemented each other nicely. Brook's 100 and Root's 50 come up in the same. Alzari Joseph over. Root starts sweeping and reverse sweeping when Sinclair comes on to bowl spin. Harry Brook nicks one on 109 from Seales wide of the stumps, seaming away. And Ben Stokes comes out and plods around for a while and then tries to belt a short ball from Seales out to Alzari Joseph at deep square leg. And Jamie Smith gets out just before the lunch break. Sinclair gets a little nick behind. Last ball of the session, the very, very last ball of the session. So England 307 ahead at that point, and even then it was like, well, maybe they could pull them back. Chris Woakes bats all right for a little while, and then he tries to drive one on the up. Shamar Joseph with some extra bounce and gets caught by Jason Holder well at slip, but Root's there, so he's able to cruise along. He needed to get to 132 today to get his average back to 50, and 135 to catch Brian Lara for total runs. Didn't quite get either. Got caught at cover for 122, but brought up his 100 beautifully with that square drive off Alzari Joseph. 32 test tons, so that equals Kane Williamson, Steve Smith, Steve Waugh. Surely the 3 current players will all go past Steve Waugh at some point. Next is Alistair Cook with 33. That's England's most for test centuries. 34 is Yunus Khan, Brian Lara, Sunil Gavaskar, Mahela Jayawardena. So, Joe Root not far off, catching some great players for runs scored and for hundreds scored. 5 tons in 8 tests at Trent Bridge, which is outrageous, and celebrates by getting out the reverse ramp shot as well, which he hadn't played up until that point. But once he gets the 100, he's able to do it, as you say, frolicking through a meadow, and yes, eventually gets out, and Gus Atkinson's whacked a couple, and they dropped 2 catches in 2 balls at slip, one off Atkinson, one off Wood, and then Seales bowls. It was Wood, wasn't it, who he went through with that fast one. So it was kind of a hat trick, really. There were three dismissals were created, although had the first one been taken, the second and third ones would have been different deliveries, so it wouldn't have panned out that way. But basically, he bowled 3 wicket-taking balls that didn't all take wickets, if that makes sense. So Jayden Seales was screaming demonstratively. He bowls Shoaib Bashir, so ended up with 3 wickets, I think. And, it was a good good ball, fast swinging in a bit. So England 425, they led by 384. West Indies needed 385, and they got nowhere near it. Any last thoughts on the upward surge of Joe Root into the statistical stratosphere before we head to our Hall of Fame?
Not really. I mean, I think the fact that we're all now sort of slightly obsessing about it. We're able to obsess about it because he had to go through some names that are clustered together. When he gets past Lara, everyone's sort of just like stop looking until you get to Sangakkara and Cook.
Yeah.
Well, you got Sangakkara and Cook, who's only 480 odd away, and then everyone just stopped looking because you have to get up to the 13,200s at that point. But I mean, there's also 50-plus scores. That's something that people keep a little eye on. He's up to 94 50-plus scores, and I remember when Geoffrey Boycott, I think, became the first man to get 60 50-plus scores, and that seemed like a thing once. So inflation, the world's changing. It's leaving us all behind, Geoff. It's leaving us all behind.
All right, quick break, then the Hall of Fame. It is the final word. World Cup. Daily? No, it's not. It's a test match. Well, what am I talking about? It's England and West Indies. I've had that so ingrained into my head over a month of T20 World Cup. So why not? It's the World Cup of Test cricket, which was contested at Trent Bridge today.
They were bowled out in 20 overs. They were bowled out in 20 overs, so it amounts to that.
True, thereabouts. The show's brought to you by Westfield. You can, Daniel, step into a world of fantasy this summer at Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. This is not another reference to the next lingerie pop-up that we've been talking about recently. It is an invitation. If you are someone, particularly if you have some young kids to entertain, and I think it is going to be school holidays momentarily in the UK, you can take them to discover the Giant's Garden. You can live life in Jason Holder's house with giant flowers, a giant watering can, and a giant day of fun with a Zorb pool. I don't know what a Zorb pool is, but it sounds good. A giant swing ball and regular-sized arts and crafts. All the fun of an Australian oversized roadside attraction with none of the awkward conversation with problematic caravan-dwelling retirees. The Giant's Garden opens at Westfield London on July 26th and Westfield Stratford City on August 16th. Everything's free. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. Tell the Giant that we sent you. Hall of Fame. Tell me something that jumped out at you, something you enjoyed, something that tickled your fancy in a final word kind of way today.
Well, we've mentioned a few of them, unfortunately. So I was holding off on Jayden Seales' celebration on getting Mark Wood out, which was one of furious rage. It was beating the fists on the floor with outrage after the second catch had gone down in consecutive balls. Then finally clipped, and it was a beautiful ball. It was absolutely gorgeous. And then it wasn't so much of a celebration as a primal roar of anger at his teammates, which I really loved. And the other thing, which I'm just going to mention again, because you've mentioned it in passing, but just watching Gus Atkinson at the other end turn down a run for Shoaib Bashir, as if to say, no, young man. Here's a bloke at one end with a test average of 1, protecting a bloke at the other end with a test average of 2. And
you're batting 9, mate. You're batting 9. Yeah. I don't think you get to farm the strike, buddy.
It was hilarious, genuinely hilarious. And when it happened, I was on commentary at the time, and I think I let out a little squeak of disbelief. What? I mean, is Shoaib Bashir never going to be allowed to score a run? Because whoever he's batting with, Chris Martin could come back and be put in the team and be put in at number 10. And he'll be shielding Shoaib Bashir.
No, thanks, mate.
That guy who plays for Bangladesh, who's got 18 consecutive noughts. He's going to come in. They'll play in a franchise game with Shoaib Bashir, and he's going to go, no, Shoaib, no, don't take the single. It's the last ball of the over. I better be on strike. I found it hysterical. So those are my two favourite moments.
It was hysterical. Shoaib Bashir has a first-class average above 10. He's okay. He's not the worst batter going around. And every time he stylishly clips one through the leg side and heads off for a single, someone says, no, not so fast, buddy. Not so fast. Back you go. Back you go. That was unbelievable. I loved Josh De Silva with the review against Chris Wokes when Wokes was batting, De Silva's keeping. It was Kevin Sinclair, the off-spinner. bowls it outside the off stump. It's a mile outside the off stump. It's not turning. Kevin, you haven't turned a ball in your life. You're not turning one here. And it's padded away, but with the bat in behind the pad. So there's, justifiable defence that he's played a shot. So it's not going to be given as not playing a shot. It's hit him about a foot outside the off stump. And Sinclair's appealing for it. And De Silva behind the stumps goes, impact outside, impact outside, impact outside. He's broadcasting this to everyone who can hear it because he's the wicketkeeper and he can see that. And then Kevin Sinclair is turning to Craig Brathwaite. It's like when a child has one parent who says no, so they just go to the other one instead. Sinclair is like, I fucking Craig Brathwaite at mid-off or at cover, wherever he was, going, oh, I think it was pretty close. I think just suggesting with his eyes, very close, very close, very close. And eventually, with 1 second to go, Brathwaite does the most reluctant T sign I've ever seen, just sort of cups his hands together and goes, oh, fine, we'll have a look. And De Silva he is not impressed. He puts both his arms out. He looks at them both. He goes, come on. What are you doing? He makes it very, very clear. And then the replay comes up and shows how far outside before the ball tracking's even happened. He's just standing there. Athanase has come up from slip and is just cackling behind Josh De Silva and just puts his head on Josh De Silva's shoulder to try to contain the laughter while De Silva's glaring daggers at the other two. And then it comes up, impact miles outside, and De Silva just cups her hand to his mouth and broadcasts to anyone who can hear it. It wasn't me. That wasn't me. Don't blame me. Not my decision. Oh, what a sequence.
That was gorgeous. He started it, didn't he? He started it right at the very beginning because the appeal came, and he almost made the sign before the umpire had shaken his head. There's the universal sign where you put both hands together and then you go, you move them to one side, meaning it's hit outside, right?
Yeah.
No, and he was so. I've never seen a man more certain about anything in my entire life. Really, it was a beautiful moment. I tell you, this has been a fun game for silliness. It's been really good.
All right, well, that's it. That is the end of the match. So the Final Word Daily will be back for the third test, which will come up about 4 days from now. There'll be other bits and pieces in between time. Story time will come out tomorrow, and whatever else there'll be a weekly show, presumably, between now and then as well. Thank you, Daniel Norcross, for joining us from Trent Bridge for the duration. Thanks to everyone who's supporting the show on patreon.com/thefinalword. You can get the ad-free feed there as well. And thanks to Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City for supporting the show. More extra, less ordinary. That's it. Geoff Lemon, Daniel Norcross. We'll see you very, very soon on The Final Word.
Bye.